Welcome everyone, I am Theodore Prestior, and this is Elden Ring. This is made by FromSoft and those people that did all the Soulsborne games like Bloodborne, Dark Souls, Demon Souls, and Sekiro. I'm familiar with the Dark Souls series because that was pretty much the only things that were on PC. I think Sekiro is also on PC, but I didn't really have any interest in playing it. So it's been quite some time since I've actually played any of these types of games. I originally was going to do this playthrough blind, but my inexperience really showed. And the other frustrations that added to it was I'm playing on the PC version, and FromSoft has a notorious reputation when it comes to PC ports and their poor performance. So poor performance while recording with no experience whatsoever just made it a very unappealing experience, especially since I was very stubborn and I wanted to fight a particular boss over and over again. I've done a bit of a playthrough on my own, and it's hard to say how far I got. Needless to say, I didn't kill any of the major bosses, but I did explore quite a bit of the world. Actually, I'll take that back. I explored a part of the world. I won't say it was a large amount because I don't even know what the span of the world is. Needless to say, the direction they kind of took this game compared to the other ones is very different. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do this playthrough, assuming it comes up at all, because I haven't really done open world games before, because this game is very open, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. So I'm going to go new game here. Right off the bat, it gives you a bunch of classes to pick from. Before I go into that, in the bottom left you can see that there's some help buttons that are Xbox controls. Originally, when I was doing my first attempt to record this, doing it blind, I wanted to try to do the keyboard and mouse controls and see how it played. And I wasn't expecting much from Software, but even then I was disappointed. All the prompts and all the help tutorials are in Xbox controls. Even if you unplug your Xbox controller, it will still give you only Xbox controls. So it was pretty much impossible for a blind playthrough to even get off the ground, because I had no idea what I was supposed to be pressing in most of the cases. Like, I can do maybe the basics, but some of the more things, like knowing how to two-hand your weapon, became a bit of an issue. In any case, each of the classes here, the screen's kind of redundant, but it's more or less just an opportunity to kind of see what the characters look like with their various starting kits. Each of these starting kits gives you a starting level, starting stats, and starting gear. And that's kind of the only things that stand out. Obviously, if you want to be as flexible as possible, Wretch starts you at level 1 with 10 in all your stats, and you have only a club. Having no armor in this game, armor in general doesn't do too much unless you don't have a slot equipped. If you don't have a slot equipped, then you're going to be in a lot of pain. And if you have no slots equipped, like this, you're probably going to get one-shot pretty often. Confessor is essentially hybrids, Faith melee build, and it's one I've been playing on my personal playthrough. I think the only disadvantage this thing has is low health and kind of low carry weight, which with the medium armor they're equipped with kind of makes them already kind of struggling if you want to expand out into anything heavier. Prisoner seems to be kind of arcane, the arcane melee hybrid, though it definitely looks pretty weird. Samurai, I have no idea what it is, except the fact that it starts out with katana, and people like katanas, and so I guess they decided to just here's a class that gives you katana right off the bat. It also starts with a bow and 2 types of arrows. As far as killing the supposed first boss that's going to inevitably murder us, Samurai is definitely one of the options that can possibly kill it by just shooting all your arrows at it. Prophet, standard faith caster. Astrologer, standard arcane caster. Bandit, your standard agile archer, dagger wielding character. Hero is heavy strength build, I think. And then Warrior is melee dexterity build, dual wielding type. And then Vagabond is essentially your all-rounder melee type that has a lot of good gear. Starts with pretty decent armor, good shield, good sword, and has a halberd. So pretty good stuff. So on my personal playthrough, I've been doing Confessor. For this one, I want to go ahead and do Astrologer, because I want to mess around with arcane spells and see how that plays. A-type, B-type is just male and female. We'll go B-type. And then just to kind of show how the origins work, you can actually see the stats up here. So Ret starts at level 1. You can see the stats, and then below the stats you can see little symbols that represent what's starting gear. So this character literally starts with just a club. This guy, the Confessor, definitely has a cool little background there, church spy and stuff about doing covert operations. Pretty cool. Now the bad part about this is it doesn't actually show you what spells you start with if you happen to be a spellcaster. But the Confessor, he does start out with Quick Heal and the spell that softens your footsteps and reduce fall damage. Essentially, the standout, of course, is just the Quick Heal. Prisoner, I have no idea what spell it starts with, but you can see that it definitely has a staff. I don't know what's... Like I said, I don't know the exact purpose of the Samurai. I guess the disadvantage is it doesn't start with the best shield, which, I mean, you're going to be using that katana anyway. I think the Prophet starts with a standard heal and probably an offensive spell. One thing to note about faith builds, or faith spells, is they actually include a lot more attack spells now, which is pretty helpful. Granted, you have to go find them and find someone that can sell it to you, which is the same issue as the Astrologer. If you don't know where the Arcane Caster Trainer is at, you are going to be struggling for a while, needless to say. Also, I wasn't sure what else the Astrologer started with, but it looks like I do start with a buckler, and I don't know what the other weapon is. It's probably a dagger. But yeah, you can kind of see the variety here. Sword, shield, halberd, twin katanas, and a shield, big axe, I think that's a war axe, with or battle axe with a shield, and then bandit, of course, has a bow with arrows and buckler and dagger there. In any case, I'm sticking with Astrologer because I want to mess with magic. Keepsake. So much like in the other Soulsborne games, you can start with a item. You can start with nothing if you really want to. The Crimson Amber Medallion does start with increase your max HP. It's just a small amount, but it's helpful in the early game when you don't have a relic yet. Needless to say, I know where you can get one, and it's pretty cheap to buy, so I don't really need it. Lands Between Rune. The gold of grace shining in the eyes of the people, the lands between, use to gain many runes. So this can get you a bunch of runes right off the bat, which runes are essentially souls or blood from the previous games. It's used for leveling up and buying things. Golden Seed. Essentially this will upgrade your Sacred Flask to have more uses. Pretty much one of the best ones to pick. Fanged Imp Ashes is a summon, but you can't do summons until you have a certain item, so this is useless until you get the summoning bell. Which I know where you can get, and you can get it pretty early if you know where it's at, but it's also very easy to miss. Cracked Pot. So this game does have crafting in it, and a cracked pot is what you need to actually create things like firebombs. And in this game, unlike in Dark Souls, you can't just buy 99 firebombs and go to town. You pretty much have to craft them, and in order for you to craft any sort of bomb, you have to have a cracked pot for each one. So this is your kind of your hard cap on any sort of rather powerful consumables. So having this would at least get you an extra one. Not exactly the best, but if you are someone that wants to go heavy into consumable items, it's an option. Stone Sword Key. I don't remember what it was called in Dark Souls 2, but there are these stones essentially you can use to unlock certain things. That's what Stone Sword Keys were. And you start with 2 of them if you pick this option. 2 of them will unlock a very early option that is very, very difficult. Pretty much right out the tutorial. But if you don't go for that, there's other options, of course. You can just hold on to them for other things. You can get these also just throughout the game, as well as purchase from certain merchants. So it's not bad if you want an early start on certain locations. Like some of the things you can open literally just lead to a treasure chest. Other times it leads to a dungeon that will murder you. So if you are familiar with the game, it could be a good early game pickup. Bewitching Branch, I'm pretty sure is just the thing that lets you transform into objects, and you only get 5 of them. And then Boiled Prawn is essentially a food item that gives you a temporary buff. And then this last one is, I guess, something that just attracts aggression. I think it's just a way of getting more aggro, which I don't really see the purpose of. In any case, I'm going to grab Golden Seed. There's the only other thing I would probably even consider grabbing is maybe the keys. Crackpot can be useful, but yeah, and I don't know how many runes a lands between rune gives. It sounds like a lot because it sounds like bigger than anything I've heard before. But I know some decent grind spots if I do need to grind for runes, and more often than not, you don't really need to grind for runes as long as you explore a lot and don't die. So yeah, we'll stick with Golden Seed. I am going to just load a favorite. I'm going to go with that one. And we'll call ourselves that. Galdea. Alright, so let's go ahead and finish this up. There's a cutscene. I don't know how loud it's going to be. We'll see how it sounds.
The fallen leaves tell a story. The great Elden Ring was shattered. In our home, across the fog, the lands between. Now, Queen Marika the Eternal is nowhere to be found. And in the night of the Black Knives, Godwyn the Golden was first to perish. Soon, Marika's offspring, demigods all, claimed the shards of the Elden Ring. The mad taint of their newfound strength triggered the shattering. A war from which no lord arose. A war leading to abandonment by the greater will. Oh, rise now, ye tarnished, ye dead who yet live. The call of long-lost grace speaks to us all. Horalu, chieftain of the Badlands, the ever-brilliant Gold Mask. Fear, the deathbed companion, the loathsome Dung-Eater, and Sir Gideon Ofnir, the all-knowing.
And yes, it seemed to desync for me as well.
And would again bless. A tarnished of no renown. Cross the fog to the lands between. To stand before the Elden Ring and become the Elden Lord.
Alright, sorry about the desync in the cutscene. I don't recall if it was that bad the first time I attempted this, but it seemed to fix itself. I went ahead and put a cut in the recording just in case. Last time I did audio checks, it seemed to be okay. It sounded faint on my end, but it should be okay on you guys' end. If not, I apologize. In any case, let's go ahead and take a look at what we got. So, tutorial stuff, no worries. Okay, we have a short sword. Okay, it's not a dagger. That's good. Alright, so if anyone that's familiar with my previous Let's Plays of Dark Souls, and Dark Souls 2 and 3, I generally like to read all the flavor text. So let's go ahead and start with that. So we got the Astrologer's Staff here. It has a sorcery scaling of 115. Hopefully that's good. It does have C scaling int, which is also good. Oh, I did not mean to unequip it. Alright, so... Alright, how is it... Wrong. Something's not right. Okay, that works. Alright, first things first, I'm going to unequip that, because I don't want it on my quick slots. Okay, so... no matter what class you pick, you start with Memory of Grace. It's essentially a hard reset button that takes you back to your lost save point, but you lose all your runes in the process. In this game, there's almost no reason to ever use this. And if we go to that, the Memory of First Grace, which once guided bygone Tarnish to the lands between, lose all runes and become in return to the last site of grace visited. It is merely a cycle. Stand before the Elden Ring, become the Elden Lord. Here's the golden seed that we picked. A golden seed found at the base of an illusory tree increases a sacred flask number of uses, can be used after resting at a site of grace. When the Elden Ring was shattered, these seeds flew from the Ur tree, scattering across the various lands as if life itself knew that its end had come. Here's the two spells we start with. We start with Glintstone Pebble, the most basic glintstone sorcery of the Academy of Raya Lucaria. The glintstone serves as a conduit, launching magical projectiles at foes. The sorcery can be cast repeatedly and while in motion. This is a universal first step on the journey to true knowledge of sorcery. Glintstone Arc, one of the glintstone sorceries of the Academy of Raya Lucaria, fires a horizontal arc of magic that spreads outward. This sorcery can be cast repeatedly and while in motion, granted to sorcerers who depart from the academy to embark on journeys. In order to fend off large groups of would-be adversaries, fools often roam in packs. Short sword. A short straight sword with a short blade. In addition to its reliable standard damage, this weapon also boasts powerful piercing attacks. Lightweight among straight swords, this weapon is easy to wield, requiring only humble attributes. Skill. Kick. Push an enemy back with a high kick. Effective against enemies who are guarding and can break a foe's stance. Sometimes a simple tool is the most effective. Astrologer's Staff. Staff of the Astrologers. A glintstone is embedded in the tip, enabling it to be used as a catalyst for sorcerers. Sorceries must be memorized first at a site of lost grace, and a staff must be equipped to cast them. No skill, so there's nothing. There's no special skill for this. Scripture Wooden Shield. A small wooden round shield. It is light and easy to handle, but cannot offer the damage negation of a metal shield. An ancient cipher engraving lines engraving lines the circumference, though it isn't much. It boosts holy damage negation. Skill, parry. Use the skill in time with a foe's melee attack to deflect it and break that foe's stance. This provides an opening to perform critical hits. Astrologer's Hood. Hood fashioned from supple cloth, worn by those who look to the cosmos above. They read fate in the stars and are said to be heirs of the glintstone sorcerers, but alas, the night sky no longer cradles fate. Got the robe, same flavor text. Gloves, same flavor text. Trousers. And that's everything. Okay, so I'm going to go into the equipment again. So the short sword has strength. So there's a few things to note. You can see that the attack power shows various stats. Some weapons will have multiple damage types. In most cases, they're going to have physical as their default, but some may also do additional damage, such as holy lightning. It shows what critical damage. All weapons can be used for guarding. So even if you don't have a shield, you can potentially guard with your short sword. So on the right side, you can see the guard negations. So compared to the shield, which I can guard about 58% of physical, the short sword can only guard 42% of physical. Also, each weapon and shield has a guard boost, which represents how well you can guard against attacks. The higher it is, the less stamina it costs to block attacks, and the more effective you are against guarding against heavier attacks. The attributes required. If you do not meet the required requirements for the attributes, you cannot use that weapon. You can use the weapon for attacking, but it'll be far less effective, and it may affect your attack animations in a bad way. In the case of casting magic, though, if you don't meet the requirements, you just can't prepare the spell, so you can't use it at all. Besides that, there's also attribute scaling, which affects just what certain stats will do for the item's effectiveness. So in the case of a short sword, it has strength D and dex D. So both of them essentially have the same scaling. So every point of strength or dex I increase will influence this weapon's damage. In the case of the staff, though, you can see it has strength E scaling, which means it scales it even worse than the short sword. But it also scales off of intelligence, which is a C. So the more intelligence I have, the more effective the staff will be in casting magic, essentially. Besides that, there was some mention of skills. So depending on what weapon you have equipped, you can do, depending on what weapons you have in each hand, you can do certain skills. So the short sword, I can do the kick ability, and the shield will let me do the parry ability. Now, if your left weapon, in this case the shield, has a skill, usually when you activate your weapon skill, it will be based off your left hand weapon, which in most cases will be a shield. Now, if your shield doesn't have a skill, then it'll use your right hand. Or if you happen to be two-handing your right hand weapon, it'll default to that instead. Parry is a very good ability. Unfortunately, I'm not good at it, and with the poor performance and the fact I'm recording, don't expect me to ever successfully parry. In most cases, I'm not going to even attempt it. Kick can be useful for breaking shields, but I don't know how well that's going to work because I've never used skills like that before. In any case, so a few things we can do. I'm going to go ahead and drop the shield at this point because, as I mentioned before, I'm not going to be very good at it. So what I want to do is equip this in main hand and equip that in offhand. So this staff doesn't have a skill, but this weapon does. So whenever I use my skill, it's going to be the kick. And if I want to cast any spells, I just have to use my left-handed weapon. So we got that going for us. I would have considered holding onto the shield if it blocked 100% physical, which is what most of the other shields do. Any of the metal shields will usually probably block all physical, but since it doesn't, it's not going to save me. In any case, stat-wise, if we take a look at our stats, we have very high mind, intelligence, and I guess okay dexterity. So dexterity can influence things like, actually we can just take a look at it. Explanations. So vigor affects how much HP we get and affects fire resistance and immunity. Mind affects how much FP you have, which is essentially mana, but it's also used for weapon skills and magic. Endurance affects your stamina and also affects your carrying capacity. So if you look at equipment load, you'll see that we have a certain amount of equipment. Depending on what percentage of a load you have, it will affect what sort of overall load you have. So with what we have right now, we have medium load, which means we have a medium roll. If you go to heavy, you're going to have a very sluggish roll. If you go light load, you'll have a very fast roll. And if you ever go over your equipment load, you're going to be going very slow movement wise, and you won't really be able to roll. Strength obviously affects strength scaling weapons as well as your physical defense. Dexterity will boost dex-based weapons as well as reduce cast times for spells, soften fall damage, and makes it harder for you to be knocked off your horse, which, spoiler, there's a horse in this game. Intelligence, of course, boosts sorceries and improves magic resist. Faith improves incantations. Arcane is essentially luck in this game, but it also can influence certain spells, from what I can understand. But for the most part, it doesn't seem to be very useful. But you never know. There probably is some sort of luck/arcane build out there. Anyway, with all that, we do start at level 6. In comparison, I believe the Confessor starts at level 10. So we actually require less runes to level up because we need to catch up. So that gives us a little bit more flexibility. Besides that, I think that's everything. I apologize for taking so long on this. Also, why is it so heavy? Oh, it's because of the robe. The robe is so heavy. I'm just checking a few things here. If I had to unequip that, nope. Okay. So yeah, no, but it seems I'm stuck at medium load. I would have to. Yeah, I would have to shed quite a bit. If I shed that. Yeah, I'm just seeing what I need to shed if I were to. Yeah, even that. Okay. I would have to shed boots and my sword just to get light load. So yeah, if you look at this, that's medium load. You can see it's... even my roll goes farther now. Okay. So with that, let's go ahead and grab this. Tarnished Wizened Figure. Item for online play. Used to write messages. Your message will be conveyed to other worlds, allowing other players to read them. A finger of corpse wax so emancipated the bone is visible. It is a relic of those who came before, left to help those who would come after. Most cases, it will not help. So what messages can do is people will usually use it to put up snarky comments or be trolls. But if you happen to put up helpful comments, like, hey, there's a hidden passage here, and actually mean it, or, point out that, hey, there's an item around this corner, it can help you, or, warn you about ambushes, things like that. So there's a lot of things you can do with it. If you read a message and it's you like it, you can always rate it with good. And if you do, if that player is online at the time, I'm guessing they are if their messages are showing, but if they get a good appraisal, they will actually get healed as a reward. So it's actually a good idea to put down good messages to point out things to help out players. Fortunately, in my personal playthrough, I haven't really been doing that. But getting extra heals is always helpful, especially in a game where you have it as a limited resource. Alright, so I'm just checking what spell I have equipped. Okay, Pebble. So there's a lot of things I can run around with, but there's really not anything here at all. I'm just going to ignore all the messages because they're not helpful. The only thing it's going to probably point out is how we're about to die. So, yeah, in Dark Souls, I never really liked using shields, and I was never good at parrying in the first place. So I tend to just rely on dodge rolls. That's why I went ahead and dropped the shield here. Alright, first boss. Grafted Scion. He does have a shield, so he can prevent some damage. So compared to other bosses, first bosses in in the Dark Souls games, or Demon Souls, this guy is really hard. Because he has pretty much no openings. Alright, I'm alive. I will say, as a caster, that stutter was bad. As a caster, I've done more damage to this guy than I've done in any of my other previous games. So, I'm just kind of practicing at this point. If you do somehow beat this boss, which it is possible even as a wretch, you will get his sword and his shield, essentially. And they're decent, from what I've seen. But fighting this guy takes a long time. Because especially if you don't have a ranged weapon, because he has very few safe openings. Okay, drop your shield, thank you. Yeah, as you can see, he can block it. Come on. So yeah, he doesn't have very many openings. In Dark Souls, you could kind of count the number of attacks they have in a certain pattern, and then go in for the opening, or attack between very slow swings. This boss has very, very fast swings, and there are other aspects. Oh, I missed. Okay, there it goes.
Don't worry, Torrent. Fortune is on her side. We found her here after all. One of her kind is sure to seek the Elden Ring. Even if it does violate the Golden Order.
So yeah, like I was talking earlier. So one, that boss will two-shot me. It also two-shots the Confessor. Even if I had avoided all the attacks, I would have eventually ran out of mana or FP, and I wouldn't be able to cast any more spells. I probably would have been able to take it down to half at best. And then, as far as how, there's videos of people defeating it with the Wretch, and it's very slow because you're using a club or you're using, a single melee weapon of any sort. And that thing really only has 2 opportunities to run in and get a hit in, and before you have to run away. Because the thing just swings so much. Even if you went with like the heavy armor guy with the shield, his shield, your stamina would run out on a number of those combos if you just stay there and try to duke it out with him. So needless to say, I mean it's kind of just a flex if you're able to kill him. It takes so long that it's almost not worth the trouble. Besides, we'll eventually come back there, I suppose. In any case, unlike in other games, we just start out with the flask here. So we got Flask of Crimson Tears and the Flask of Cerulean Tears, which are automatically added to our inventory. We got 3 charges of the red flask and 1 of the blue. Needless to say, blue heals FP, red heals health. Alright. Sacred Flask modeled after a golden chalice that was once graced by a tear of blessing. Filled with the crimson tears, this flask restores HP with use, rest at a site of grace to replenish. The one washed up on the grave site was sure to die until this flask offered its gift of rejuvenation to seek the Elden Ring. Same thing here, just the only difference is Cerulean Tears, and it restores FP. Alright, off we go. So there's this guy here. Brave Tarnish, take the plunge of learning and remembrance. Recall the arts of war in your warrior's blood. So, you can either go that way and continue the game, or you can go down here and do a tutorial. The tutorial will get you a few runes and just some general experience, as well as what's up there, which is just an emote. So we're going to go ahead and do the tutorial. We're just going to kind of run through it real quick. Alright. Alright, so this thing's talking about Sites of Grace. This is the equivalent of lanterns and bonfires from the Soulsborne series. As their save point, if you sit at them, you get a full restore and your flask refill. When you sit at a site of grace, it does respawn all enemies, except for certain bosses. And it'll also respawn most resources, except the limited ones. So if you ever need to farm items or something, you can always just do that over and over again. Alright, so I've seen what this spell... So you can kind of do this in a combo, and then we have this other one, which is kind of an AoE. Alright. Some spells can be charged up by holding down the cast button. Neither of these spells have that ability, but things like Fireball does. Also, you generally want to touch every Lost Grace so you actually get access to it. Oh, I guess we should go over this. This game does have time. There's days and nights. Certain things will happen in daytime and certain things will happen at nighttime, depending on the area. Flask, we can add charges, which we're going to go ahead and do. We have that golden seed that we start with. So now we have... Yeah, so it's letting us know we can allocate our flask at bonfires, essentially. So our flask started with 4 charges, and it was originally distributed 3-1. The seed made it so we have 5 charges. By default, that extra charge went to the healing side. For right now, we're actually going to go 3 and 2. I'm going to actually go 2-3. Usually you want to go more into healing because the healing flask is actually really fast to drink compared to casting a heal spell. But I don't plan on being hit right now, so we're just going to go with the extra spell, the extra FP right now. Alright, so we're just going to go through this. Oh, I guess there's a few things to note. Anyone that's familiar with Dark Souls, and I guess even Bloodborne, is this. It used to be really, really complicated to do jumps in the previous games because you can only really do them as like a running jump type thing, and it was always like a horizontal thing. But now we actually have a vertical jump that we can do like this. You can also do attacks while jumping, and it has benefits of doing so. And then if I do left thumbstick, I can go into this crouch mode, which will quiet my footsteps so I can sneak better. Alright, some hints it's giving me right now, which I'll talk about in a second. So sneak attack. So if I hold down Y and then hit right bumper, I'll two-hand my weapon. Which has so two-handing your weapon has some benefits. It'll effectively make your strength be considered 1.5 times what it was. So right now our strength is 8. So two-handing this, our strength is considered 12, which will give us a little extra damage. It could also help meet certain requirements, because certain weapons are very heavy, and you may not have the early game strength for it. Yeah, I could practice parrying here, but I'm not going to. Alright. So yeah, I can do these. It's letting us know we can do sorceries and incantations. I'm not going to worry about that. And then it's letting us know we can guard, which I'm not going to worry about right now. And then it's letting us know we can dodge roll, which I've already shown off. And now it's going to show us that we can jump. So previously, as a confessor, I didn't have a ranged weapon at all. So I can just kill him up there. Here we can gather materials. In every corner of the lands, you can get fruits, flowers, and even hunt animals and get all sorts of stuff for crafting. By the way, there's crafting in this game. I'm just seeing if there's anything else I missed. No, it's just raw fruit. Alright. Alright, here it's going to let us know about... So yeah, we can switch our left hand, right hand. We can wield in two hands. If I want to, I can do left bumper with the Y button to two-hand my staff, but there's no real reason for me to do so. Okay, so that's what kick can do. It can be used to break guard. And then, so I guess another thing you can talk about in this game, this was nothing new in Dark Souls, but they've added to it. In Sekiro, there was something called like breaking stance, and that allows you to do like a critical hit or a visceral attack. And that's in this game as well. If you do enough hard hits, even against someone that's not being as just normal blows, even against a boss, they have kind of an invisible meter, and if you manage to deplete that meter with heavy blows or other things, you will stagger them, and then you can get a free, visceral critical hit on them. Alright. Jump. Jump. I like doing the jump slash. Especially two-handed. Alright, and then up here... It's going to talk about skills, which we just did. We did kick. Kick does cost mana, or FP to use. So it's another resource. It's another thing that dips into that resource. In most cases, especially in this game, even if you're not a caster, you should be taking advantage of your FP with your weapon skills if you can get one. There are definitely a number of good weapon skills out there if you want to mess with them. They can be very good for doing damage or breaking stance or staggering and all sorts of good things. So let's talk about sneaking up, which we've been doing. We can take advantage of the tall grass here to sneak better. And then go stab this guy in the back. You can also do a heavy strike, which if you hold down the right trigger, you can actually charge it up. And if you charge it up and hit somebody with it, it does even more stagger damage. So if you're up against an enemy that you might not be able to one-shot with a backstab, you could, instead of doing the backstab, you can do a charge back attack, and then you'll do that damage and stagger them, and then you can do a follow-up visceral. Yes, here it is. It's talking about stance breaking here. And one of the there's a few ways that a few means to actually break stance more effectively. One of them is doing a charge attack, or the other is doing a jump attack. And then there's one other way, and I don't remember what it was. Yeah, I don't remember what it was. So yeah, break his stance. So this time I wasn't breaking through a guard. It was just I did enough stagger damage that he staggered anyway. Alright, so there's this little statue here. So usually when you die, you come back to your quote-unquote bonfire. But they added these stakes of Marika, which allow you to respawn in this location instead. This can put you a lot closer to where the action was, where you died. It can also be used like just prior to a boss fight, so you don't have to run so far. A lot of nice quality of life things they've done in this game. Alright. Alright, so this is talking about guard counters. I'm not gonna... Oh, sorry. So I talked about parrying. Guard counters is where you... the moment you block, just do a normal block, you can do right trigger to immediately do a counter, which can be really useful for breaking... Okay, yeah, that's the way... that's the other thing that could break stance, which is guard counters. Okay. Break your stance. And... Oh, this... So, as a confessor, that would have been a kill. But since I'm a puny little mage, I was a little short. So yeah, that was our first quote-unquote boss, but as you can see, it was more of a tutorial guy. Alright, so as you can see, we're back up here now. You can see the ghost that we talked to earlier. We can get our pose there. And then we can just... continue onwards. The stuttering is going to get worse as we go outside, by the way. So I talked earlier about those stone keys. You can use them on this statue here. Depending on the statue, it'll either require 1 or 2. This one requires 2. And if you put those 2 in here, it'll break these fog gates and allow you to go there. So that up ahead is poison. And then it leads. You can easily just run through it. It's mostly safe as long as you're not rolling. Even if you're rolling, you'd still make it. And you'll go around the corner, and there's this rolling spike death trap that is rolling all through these big giant holes. And essentially, you have to kind of race it to get to the little safe cubby holes. And then there's a bunch of these teleporting ghosts throughout that you can run into as you run into the cubby holes. And then you have some options. There's a part where you can drop down to a lower level, fight things that look like these gargoyles, and then inevitably run into 2 of those armed sword-wielding shield guys that just murdered us. And then I'm not sure what's beyond that because I never got beyond it. There's also instant death fire traps on that route. The other route is you can go down the ramp instead, trying to continue to race that other, rolling spike trap until you reach the end, in which case, there are 2 ends. One of them leads to a really, really hard boss that I didn't know existed. That's actually kind of sloppy, to be honest, from what I saw in the video. And then the other is a very tough knight-type character that if you kill, you actually get a kind of like a dragon casting item thing from him, which can be pretty cool. But obviously I didn't take the keys, so I don't have access to them. And, yeah, futility head. Alright, and then there's an elevator here. So sometimes you can try to check underneath elevators for any bonuses. There's definitely no anything underneath this thing, because there's no underneath. It's just one big pillar that rises up. Alright, here we are. And then we can lift this up. And outside. You can see the big tree here. If you look in those directions, you can see other big trees, but they're not as big as that one. You can see that big-ass castle there. Needless to say, there's quite a bit out here. So for right now, I'm just going to keep moving forward. So things you might notice is these little trails. If you happen to be getting close to one of these bonfire things, they will kind of help you point those out, so you can find a save point. Summoning pools. In each area, you may find effigies of martyrs. These effigies are summoning pools. You'll find it easy to summon other players at these locations, as co-op and hostile summon signs created with small effigies gather at summoning pools. So we got an item from that. So something to note, in the previous games there were things like invasions and then co-op and all that good stuff. As long as you do not summon anyone for co-op, you will not be exposed to invasions, or at least not from other players. So something to be aware of. I don't know if that applies to situations where you summon a NPC, because I've never bothered with those summons either. But yeah, as long as you never summon anything, the only things that will ever invade you are NPCs at certain points in the game. Alright, Guidance of Grace. Grace exists to guide the tarnished and lead them along the proper path. Even now, some sites of grace retain their power. Their golden rays will guide you along your way. So yeah, if you look at this, you can see it's going in that direction. You can also bring up your map here, which, by the way, we have a map. So you can see that where the ray is actually going, it's pointing in this direction. So this is essentially towards plot progression. I will say, if you follow this, you're going to have a bad time, because the game almost, well, if you're trying to speedrun, I guess you want to follow this. But you're going to be fighting ever increasing difficulty of enemies with only what you came out of this cave with. So it's a good idea to probably explore and take advantage of what's out there. So as you can see, not much to show on the map right now. Also, something else to note. We can actually, any grace that we unlock becomes a fast travel point. Granted, you can't use fast travel while in combat, and there's other situations you might not be able to use it either. But yeah, you got some options here. All right, I'm gonna go. Yeah, so it's now telling me about the map. You can also put markers on the map. There's a lot of things that are very nice. It's also pretty much necessary because this is a big open world. And I guess one of the bad things about it being a big open world is, if you, like I mentioned, if you follow just the pure plot progression points, you are going to have a rough time on certain bosses. But if you, on the opposite end, if you just spend several hours exploring everything, getting a bunch of runes in the process, and leveling up and getting a bunch of gear and spells and stuff, and then proceed the plot progression, that can also influence the difficulty in the other direction.
Oh yes, tarnished are we? Come to the lands between for the Elden ring? Of course you have. No shame in it. Unfortunately for you, however, you are maidenless. Without guidance, without the strength of runes, and without an invitation to the round table hold, you are fated, it seems, to die in obscurity. Luckily for you, however, there is one shining ray of hope for even the maidenless. Me. Vare. Take care to listen. Are you familiar with grace? The golden light that gives life to you tarnished. You may also behold its golden rays, pointing in a particular direction at times. That is the guidance of grace, a path that a tarnished must travel. Indeed. Grace's guidance holds the answers. It will lead you tarnished to the path you are meant to follow, even if it leads you to your grave. Grace's guidance will reveal the path forward, most certainly. To Castle Stormvale, over on the cliff, the home of the decrepit demigod, Godric the Drafted. It's time you set off, I should think, to Castle Stormvale on the cliff, where Grace would guide you, if you seek the Elden Ring, maidenless as you are.
Alright, so yeah, he's like, hey, you don't have a maiden, so you can't actually use runes, which you need to use if you want to level up. He's like, hey, but you can probably still make it. Just go to that castle and fight, a demigod. Needless to say, the blood in his hands kind of shows that I probably shouldn't trust him. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and rest here to get full health. Or full FP, rather. Alright, and that's it. With that, I'm going to go ahead and call it here. I may, in future videos, I may just have it fade to black. Instead of just doing the usual outro. Because this is a very open world game, and I may be just doing a bunch of stuff. But until next time, I'm The Depressed Hero. This was Elden Ring. I'll see you guys in a bit.